The raccoon that visited your yard last night remembers your house. Not vaguely, not in the general way that an animal remembers a food source, with the kind of specific, detailed, operational memory that would surprise you if you understood exactly what it contains. She remembers where your garbage cans are and whether they have the kind of lid that can be opened with one paw or the kind that requires two. She remembers which side of your fence has the loose board. She remembers the dog, its size, its bark, the specific pattern of its patrol, the hour it stops being a problem and goes inside for the night. She remembers the motion sensor light on the back corner of the garage and exactly how far you have to stay from it to avoid triggering it. She remembers the compost bin and the gap under the deck and the corner of the garden where the bird feeder seed falls and is never cleared away by morning. She remembers all of it, in detail, permanently. And she is not the only one. Every raccoon that has ever passed through your yard has been building a file on your property since the first night it arrived. And that file, in ways you have never been told, is far more complete than you would ever imagine. Tonight we're going to read it. Welcome back to Hidden Backyard Wildlife, the channel where we sit with the small wild lives that share our yards and try to understand what they understand about the world. If you are new here, make sure you subscribe before this video is over, because what you are about to learn is going to permanently change the way you feel about the raccoon that passes through your yard in the dark, because you will finally understand that from its side of that visit, far more is happening than you have ever suspected. Today we are walking through 8 things raccoons remember about every house they visit, what those memories reveal about how their minds work, and why the animal you have been dismissing as a nighttime nuisance has been building a more complete picture of your property than most people who visit your house in the daylight ever will. Stay with me from beginning to end because memory number 6 is the one that researchers did not expect to find, and the one that changes everything about how we think about raccoon intelligence. And the final one, number 8, is the one I think will stay with you the longest, especially the next time you hear something at your garbage cans in the dark, and realize that whatever is out there already knows a great deal more about your house than you know about it. The first and most fundamental thing a raccoon remembers about every house she visits is where the food is and exactly how to get to it. Not approximately, not generally, precisely, with the kind of operational specificity that comes from the most sensitive and dexterous paws in the mammalian world combined with a memory system built over millions of years to encode the exact mechanical details of food access problems and their solutions. Researchers studying problem-solving and memory in raccoons have found that raccoons demonstrate exceptional long-term retention of task-specific procedural knowledge, remembering not just the location of a food source, but the exact sequence of physical actions required to access it. In one landmark study, raccoons trained to open a complex latch to access food remembered the correct sequence after a gap of over 3 years with no intervening practice. 3 years with no reminders. She knows your garbage can. She knows which direction the lid rotates. She knows whether the handle needs to be lifted before the lid will release. She knows if there is a bungee cord and which way it runs and which end releases more easily. She knows this because she figured it out on a previous visit, and her brain encoded the solution with the particular permanence it reserves for information that means food. If you have ever wondered why a raccoon seems to go straight to the weak point of any container or enclosure, without apparent trial and error, without the visible process of problem solving that you would expect, it is because the trial and error already happened, on a previous visit, maybe a previous season, and the solution was filed away in a memory system that does not forget things that matter. She is not solving your garbage can tonight, she solved it last spring. Tonight she is just using the answer she already has. A raccoon does not navigate your yard in the dark the way a stranger navigates an unfamiliar space, cautiously, reading as they go, constructing a map in real time from limited information. She already has the map. Raccoons are among the most spatially intelligent mammals of their size, with home ranges that in suburban environments can cover multiple city blocks and dozens of individual properties. Maintaining functional navigation across this complex, three-dimensional, frequently changing territory requires a spatial memory system of considerable sophistication, and raccoons have exactly that. Researchers studying spatial cognition in urban raccoons have found that raccoons maintain detailed cognitive maps of their home range, encoding not just the locations of food sources but the spatial relationships between landmarks, the positions of obstacles, the locations of access points and escape routes, the specific topography of each property within their territory. She knows your yard in the dark. She knows the distance from the fence to the compost bin. She knows the height of the step up to the porch and the exact width of the gap under the deck. She knows which section of your garden has the soft soil that is easy to dig in and which section has the root mat that resists digging. She knows the location of every tree and every structure and every path through your property, encoded with the three-dimensional precision of an animal that navigates regularly in complete darkness. The ease with which raccoons move through familiar-seeming spaces is not evidence of boldness, it is evidence of memory. The space was unfamiliar once, it is not unfamiliar anymore. The map was made on a previous visit and it has been retained ever since. Your yard at night from her perspective is not dark, it is a space she knows by heart. If you have a dog, the raccoon that visits your yard has already done a complete threat assessment of that animal and filed it under your property's entry in her mental database. She knows the dog's size from its footprints and its scent. She knows its bark, the difference between the bark it makes when something is at the perimeter of the yard and the bark it makes when something is actually threatening it, and the different bark it makes when it has been brought inside for the night and is barking through a window. She knows what hour the dog tends to come in for the night. She knows whether it is leashed when it is outside. She knows if it is fast enough to be a genuine threat to her. Researchers studying predator-prey dynamics in urban environments have found that raccoons in residential areas show highly individualized responses to specific dogs, maintaining detailed behavioral profiles of each dog within their regular territory, and calibrating their approach behavior, timing, and retreat routes based on the specific capabilities and habits of each individual animal. She has made a file on your dog, and the file is accurate and she uses it. If your dog is old or slow, she knows that. If your dog is easily distracted by a noise at the front of the property, she knows that too. If your dog stays on the deck and does not come into the yard, she has noted the invisible boundary it does not cross and she operates freely on the other side of it. She is not braver than other animals, she is better informed. The information was gathered on previous visits, encoded with precision, and applied tonight with the particular confidence of an animal who knows exactly who it is dealing with and what that animal will and will not do. The raccoon that visits your yard is not operating on a general nocturnal schedule. She is operating on your specific schedule, calibrated to the particular household she is visiting. She knows what time your lights go off. She knows the difference between the house being dark because everyone is asleep and the house being dark because no one is home. She knows the sound of your car returning at night and what it means for the timing of her visit. She knows if there is one person in the household or several. She knows the weekend schedule is different from the weekday schedule. She knows the particular hour at which the house reaches its deepest stillness and is least likely to produce a human in the yard. Researchers studying behavioral timing in urban raccoons have found that raccoons demonstrate property-specific activity patterns, with the timing of visits to individual properties correlated with the specific human activity schedules of those properties rather than with general environmental factors like moon phase or temperature alone. She does not visit your house at a random time within the nocturnal window. She visits your house at the time she has learned, through repeated visits across multiple seasons, is the optimal time, the time when the food is available and the household is at its most predictably quiet. And she has learned this time not by accident but by observation, by visiting at different hours on different nights and encoding the outcomes, by building, over time, a behavioral profile of your household that tells her when it is safest to be on your property and when it is better to come back later. You have a schedule, she knows it, you have never thought about this, she has thought about very little else. This is the one that reveals the true sophistication of raccoon memory, not just the capacity to store information about a property, but the capacity to detect and encode changes to that information across visits separated by days or weeks. When you move the garbage cans to a new location, she notices. When you install the bungee cord on the compost bin, she notices. When you fix the fence board, she notices. When the dog is gone for a week and then returns, she notices. When the motion sensor light is installed on the back corner of the garage, she notices. She does not just have a static map of your property. She has a dynamic model, a version of your property that is continuously updated with new information gathered on each visit, with changes logged against the baseline established by previous visits. Researchers studying change detection in raccoon cognition have found that raccoons show faster and more accurate detection of environmental changes within their familiar territory than in unfamiliar environments, suggesting that the familiarity of the territory, rather than reducing vigilance, actually sharpens their detection of deviations from the established pattern. She knows your property so well that any change stands out immediately. You moved the garbage cans 3 feet to the left. She knows, not because she is comparing it to a visual memory, the dark limits visual comparison, because the olfactory and spatial information does not match the model she has stored. Something is different. She registered it within seconds of arriving in your yard tonight. You changed something to stop her. She noticed the change on the first visit after you made it. She has already begun updating her approach accordingly. This is the one researchers did not expect to find, and the one that changes everything about how we think about raccoon intelligence. For most of the history of raccoon research, the scientific consensus was that raccoons were essentially solitary animals, coming together for mating and occasionally tolerating each other at shared food sources, but not engaging in the kind of social information exchange associated with more obviously social species. That consensus has been significantly revised. Researchers studying social behavior and information transmission in urban raccoon populations have found that raccoons, particularly females, maintain complex social networks centered on kinship groups, and that behavioral information, including information about specific food sources and access strategies, appears to be transmitted within these networks through a combination of direct observation and scent-based communication. The raccoon that visits your yard tonight may have learned things about your property from her mother, her sister, or her adult daughters. The solution to your garbage can, the specific sequence of actions required to open it, may have been worked out not by the animal currently in your yard, but by a relative who visited years ago and whose behavioral patterns were observed and encoded by younger animals learning alongside her. Your property has a file, but the file may not have been created by the raccoon currently consulting it. It may be older than that. The knowledge of your property may have been passed down through a family line of raccoons across multiple generations, updated by each animal that visits, stored in the combined memory of a social network that you have been completely unaware of. She did not just learn your yard, she may have inherited your yard. And that is not a small thing. That is not a story about a persistent pest. That is a story about a form of knowledge transmission, specific, practical, location-based knowledge passed from mother to daughter to granddaughter across years and seasons, that most people never knew raccoons were capable of until researchers began looking for it. Your house is in a family's memory, has been for longer than you knew, will be for longer than you can predict. This one will change how you stand at your back window on a dark night. The raccoon that visits your property regularly has a memory that includes you. Not just your household, you. The specific human who appears most frequently in the outdoor spaces of this property, whose scent is most concentrated on the surfaces and objects of the yard, whose behavioral patterns she has been encoding alongside everything else she knows about this place. Researchers studying individual recognition in raccoons have found that raccoons are capable of distinguishing between individual humans using a combination of olfactory, visual, and acoustic cues, and that they calibrate their behavior differently in response to specific individuals whose behavioral patterns they have learned through repeated exposure. She knows your smell. It is on the garbage can, the compost bin, the bird feeder, the deck railing. It is concentrated in the areas of the yard you use most frequently. She knows the particular scent signature that means you specifically, as distinct from other members of your household. She knows the quality of your response when you discover evidence of her visits. She knows whether you come out in the night when you hear something or whether you look out the window and go back to sleep. She knows whether you have made changes to the property in response to her visits and how quickly those changes come. She knows how persistent you are. She knows whether you are the kind of person who keeps up the countermeasures for 2 weeks and then forgets, or the kind who never stops. She has been building a profile of you as a specific individual on your specific property with your specific habits and patterns and responses. And she uses that profile every time she decides whether to visit, when to visit, how long to stay, and how careful to be. You are in her file, you have been for some time, and the file is more accurate than you would be comfortable knowing. She knows your smell, your schedule, your persistence, your patterns, the quality of your attention. She reads you the way anyone reads a person they have been studying for a long time, not with warmth, not with anything that functions like relationship, but with the particular accuracy of close, consistent, unsentimental observation. She knows you in the small ways available to her. She has always known you, and she will keep knowing you for as long as she visits this property and as long as her memory, which is longer than you think, continues to hold what it has gathered. I have saved this one for last, because it is the one I think will stay with you the longest. The most remarkable thing about raccoon memory of specific properties is not the detail of what they remember while they are active visitors. It is how long the memory persists after the visits have stopped. When a food source at a property is removed, the garbage cans moved inside, the compost bins secured, the bird feeder taken down, the raccoon stops visiting. But she does not forget. Researchers studying long-term memory persistence in raccoons have found that raccoons return to previously abandoned food source locations after gaps of a year or more, when environmental conditions suggest that the food source may have been restored, demonstrating that the property remains in their memory and is periodically reassessed rather than simply deleted when it stops producing food. She does not forget your house when you stop being useful to her. She files your house under a category that might be translated as currently unproductive, worth monitoring. And months or years later, when you get a new dog that is more tolerant, when the compost bin latch breaks, when you stop securing the garbage cans with the same diligence, when the house changes hands and the new owners do not know to be careful, she will know, and she will be back. The file on your property was not closed when she stopped coming, it was only moved to a different shelf. And there is something in that if you let yourself sit with it. You thought the problem was solved, you thought she had given up, moved on, found somewhere else, you stopped thinking about her. You relaxed the countermeasures, you told yourself the raccoon chapter of your household's life was finished. But in the memory of the animal that has been visiting your yard, in the deep, persistent, patient memory of an animal whose brain does not delete information that was once relevant just because it has become temporarily irrelevant, your house is still there. Still known, still filed under its correct coordinates in a mental map that does not lose data. She has not forgotten your house, she never will, not while she lives. And there is something in that that is larger than the question of raccoon memory or suburban pest management or any of the practical concerns that brought you to this video tonight. There is something in that about what it means to be known by something that does not forget, about the particular permanence of being encoded in a memory that was built from careful attention and has never once been careless with what it learned. Your house is in her memory the way a place enters the memory of anyone who has learned it with full attention and kept what they learned completely, specifically, permanently. She knows your house, she has always known it, she will know it for the rest of her life. And somewhere in the dark outside your window tonight, in a territory that includes your property and a dozen others, she is moving, consulting the map, reading the information stored across 100 previous visits, deciding with the quiet efficiency of a very good memory and a very patient mind whether tonight is a good night to come back. That is not a story about raccoons remembering houses. That is a story about what it means to be known, specifically, permanently, by something that pays closer attention than you realized and forgets almost nothing of what it learns. She knows your house. She always will. Before I go, I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer in the comments below. Has a raccoon ever returned to your property after a long absence, after you thought the problem was solved, after months without a visit, and gone straight to a new vulnerability as if it had been updated on your recent changes? Tell me about it. What happened? What gave you the feeling that this animal knew your yard in a way that genuinely surprised you? The stories this hidden backyard wildlife community shares are some of the most extraordinary I read every week. And every single one of them matters. If anything in this video changed the way you think about the raccoon that passes through your yard in the dark, share it with someone who would understand. Sometimes the right perspective at the right moment changes what we notice for the rest of our lives. Thank you for being here at Hidden Backyard Wildlife. Tonight, when it is quiet and the yard is dark, know that somewhere out there, in a memory you cannot access and cannot erase, your house is still perfectly known. She has not forgotten a single thing. I will see you in the next one.